Hi, I'm Tyson Franklin, and welcome to this week's episode. Oh, I'll do that again. Damn it. That's how we normally start, isn't it? Yeah. Okay. Sorry. Hi, I'm Tyson Franklin, and welcome to this week's episode of Podiatry Marketing. With me, as usual, is Big Jim Mack. How you doing today, Big Jim?
Tyson, I'm doing great. Doing really well.
So nailed the intro that time.
The seventh time's a charm, right?
Oh, that's what I reckon. When you get to 8 attempts, that's when you just give up. You turn everything off. You just come back another day. Just get down. I'm not even going to worry about this. So anyway, I am excited about today's topic. This is something new, something exciting, something that I think you mentioned that people are probably going to hear a lot about in the not too distant future from marketers. So dive in and explain what we're talking about.
Yeah. So I think a lot of people that have listened to the podcast are familiar with SEO, right? Which stands for search engine optimization. That's trying to see, on Google and other search engines, how can you kind of rank really well? But now we're all aware that these AI engines, whether it be ChatGPT, Claude, Anthropic, Google Gemini, there's also ways that people are trying to see whether there's kind of strategies or tactics to utilize the number of mentions that your clinic can be shown in when people search for a clinic or searching for podiatrists here. So this terminology is called Generative Engine Optimization, or GEO, or GEO for short. And we'll kind of get into, it's kind of something that, like I said, we've talked about on previous podcasts, but now it has a name. So you're probably going to see it being kind of floated out there more. And I think it's just helpful for people to know what this stuff is. And it can be a little confusing as well. I think we talked before the show that, when we think of geo, we're thinking about geolocation, and this has really not much to do with geolocation. So we'll dive into kind of explaining folks kind of what this is and get a better idea of how they can utilize this generative engine optimization, or GEO, as it kind of becomes a fully fledged thing.
So you're saying they've been doing this for a while, but they've only just recently given it this name.
Yeah, people have been trying to find ways to optimize, the number of mentions you can get on ChatGPT, and people are trying to experiment and see, what moves the needle there. But now it has a name, right? Instead of being SEO, we have GEO, or maybe Geo, this is what they call it. So, there's things that as this category matures, we're going to better understand, how it pulls in the information, how maybe different people's clinics can, rank a little bit higher when your patients in the local area are searching for you and for the services you provide.
Yeah, because I have noticed when you're on Google and you do a certain search, they've got their AI, and you got Gemini, and you have ChatGPT, and I use ChatGPT a lot to search different things, and it gives you links to websites. So you're saying this is now going to be counting those as well, so people know that they need to optimize those areas a little bit better.
Yeah, as Google maybe loses a bit of kind of market share in search to some of the, whether it to be ChatGPT or Google Gemini, there's going to be kind of a shift as far as, people are going to shift their marketing budgets or shift their kind of this way they spend their times, optimizing their website or their, different profiles online to make sure they can show up as much. If people, if patients are going to search more on ChatGPT in the future, you don't want to be kind of caught, flat-footed, not knowing what to do. So you're going to see this from a lot of, pitches from marketing agencies and just a lot of kind of tutorials online about this GEO.
Well, it makes perfect sense, because I still out of habit use Google more than anything else, because I've always got the computer on in front of me. But my wife will use ChatGPT for nearly every search that she does now. So you can picture advertising dollars. If companies are like, well, the people that we want to attract are using ChatGPT more, or another AI system, Google is going to notice it. They will notice that downturn in the number of searches, and therefore, they might be able to charge what they do.
Yeah, that's why they're obviously Google's pretty deep into their Google Gemini, because they're afraid of someone like ChatGPT or Anthropic or somebody else that one of their competitors takes a bunch of search traffic away from them. So, like we talked about previously, Google search used to be completely organic, and that was the SEO. You're kind of, how do I rank well on the organic search? But just like in an organic search led to paid search, maybe there's also going to be these kind of paid version of stuff in the future. But this organic GEO or Geo is kind of the first step.
Okay, so where should everybody start? What should they be doing?
I think the first step is to kind of understand the words, what does the GEO stand for? So you can kind of grasp your mind around a little bit because it
Yeah.
can be, like we talked about, a bit confusing. Because I think when we hear the term geo, our mind's going to jump to like geolocation or GPS or something like that. But really, like we talked about, geo stands for Generative Engine Optimization. So, these different AI platforms, whether it be text or images, they are kind of generative platforms. So the generative, engine makes sense. When it comes to optimization in the acronym of GEO, it may be a little bit, like we talked about, a little bit confusing. But now if you want to, obviously we have SEO where you're trying to rank for, kind of organic rankings on Google. This GEO is similar. How do you optimize, AI tools to reference your clinic, the content you've written on your blogs and on your website, and really highlight your expertise in their answers. And that's the real goal of GEO, is to try to showcase you and your clinic when people are searching in your local area for the different kind of care and services you provide. So, think of this as being kind of like the source of AI, so it can remember who you are and that your clinic exists.
So when you're writing anything out, you've got to think differently about how you're actually going to be found.
I think it's a little bit different, but I think it also just kind of, we've talked about in the past, is that you really need to talk in ways that patients are going to be searching. And so I think there's a bit of
Mm.
that kind of translates over to AI as well, because people are, I think in Google search, you're kind of getting more into keyword search. I don't think people ask questions quite as much. They're going to ask, maybe 3 words like podiatrist near me, or, you know, uh, Chicago podiatrist. But if you can, they're probably going to ask a few more words within, you're going to ask ChatGPT either through voice or through text. Who's the best podiatrist in the Chicagoland area or something. So it's a similar way, but maybe by having pages on your website or content that you write, make sure it's in the kind of the voice of the patient. I think is really going to be a helpful way to be seen more often.
I think you hit the nail on the head then, because when I search something on Google, it is 3, 4, 5 words max is what I'm searching for. When I'm searching on chat, I'm actually talking to chat, and I'll actually say, "Good morning, chat. How are you today?" And we'll start the conversation, and then I will dive in, because I'm always concerned that AI will take over one day. So I want it to know that I'm polite.
You're a very
So
polite guy.
I'm always very polite to it to start with. But then, yeah, it's more of a long form question. If it was a podiatrist, for example, I might be saying, look, I'm looking for a podiatrist in the Cairns area, maybe around the Earlville suburb, who specializes more in orthotics and has a bit of a sporting background. So that's the information I'm going to ask, and then it will pump out that information.
No, that's a perfect example. I think why this matters for podiatrists is exactly like you said. You can get a little bit more specific if you're typing stuff into ChatGPT. There, you can kind of, it's a little bit less focused on keywords, but who's the best bunion surgeon near me? When you ask those questions directly into AI assistants, you have to have kind of, content that's kind of tailored in that way. These tools don't show, just 10 blue links, right? I think the goal for a
Yeah.
long time, the game has kind of changed in that way. I think podiatrists need to understand that with these different platforms, you're not going to get, you know, 10 different options. So if you're in the top 3, you're good. We talked previously in a podcast about the kind of the top portion of Google suggests, or the kind of Google, the top banner where it kind of gives you a summary of things. This is in a similar way. Maybe if you had previously been number, 2 or 3, or maybe number 4 or 5 on Google, maybe it only sources that information from the first answer, right? So, in a chat GPT response specifically, maybe it's just going to source from one place. Maybe it's going to be WebMD or the Mayo Clinic, and maybe a couple podiatrist clinic. But, you know, being in the top 10 may no longer be good enough, or being in the top 3 may not be good enough for you to actually get that traffic. Because like if it provides that answer there, there's not really a strong motivation to click through or to look in the
Mm.
sources, then click to that website if the answer is already put out there on ChatGPT.
Yeah. And we discussed that once before. When you do a search and sometimes you get the answer, you don't look any further. You don't need to dig any further.
No, absolutely. It's almost like your clinic can be kind of invisible on some of these platforms, where you used to, like, let's say you had, like your Michigan foot doctors, right? And people type in podiatrist or foot doctor in Michigan, and you would show up there because you have some of those keywords that are in your name. That was kind of you even see some businesses kind of, I would say, not highly recommended, but using the near me in their business name now just to like kind of game Google in a way. This kind of like
Yeah.
blows that completely up because now, you're going to be kind of invisible. And your clinic might be invisible because you don't have those 10 blue links. You could lose local patients because they never see you like they previously saw you on Google.
Okay. So if we continue, so what's the biggest difference between like GEO and say SEO?
Yeah, it's hard to say with SEO, like we talked about a bit. It's really keyword driven, whether it be
Mm.
the type of searches that people are doing, they're putting in 2, 3, maybe 4 words as these kind of keywords. And kind of you dominating those keywords used to give you a great opportunity to kind of rank very highly. Also, one of the kind of key signals for Google is how people are backlinking or sending linking back to your website, whether it be local directories, maybe it's podiatry directories or podiatry businesses. Maybe some of the physios in your area are nice enough to link back to you and you link to them. That no longer matters when it comes to geo. And then you also have kind of, the ranking order. The first link is always going to get the most amount of traffic, then kind of gets lower and lower as it goes down. And like we said, how do you hide where's the best place to hide a dead body? It's on the second page
Yeah,
of Google
page 2.
results.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So
Yeah.
it's one of those things where the game has kind of changed when it comes to SEO. And then, when it comes to geo, it's really focused on, clarity. Are you speaking in the tone of voice or the questions that people are actually asking you questions about and providing helpful answers? Is it, do you have the authority? Meaning like, are you, do you build trust on the website? Do other people, look at, see your credentials? Can they crawl and see that you are the right match for them? And then also the structure. That's something that's people aren't totally sure about how AI determines the kind of structure of a website that they like best. But that's something that we're kind of early stages of learning, kind of how it parses and how it cites you. So those are the kind of the key differences between SEO and GEO.
It's complicated, but it's not. If I don't know if that made sense. Like SEO, I think it's taken people years to actually understand what SEO is and all the ways that they can use it. And I think it's interesting now, just as everybody sort of understands SEO, it's starting to move aside so GEO can sort of take its place. But are there any practical steps that clinics can actually take?
Yeah, before we jump to that, I would just kind of give a kind of a real example here, and that would be that, sometimes people would utilize what we call keyword stuffing a lot when it comes to SEO.
Yeah.
So, if you want to see, like, you want to be the orthotic person, it's like, how many different times can you mention orthotic in a blog article or on your orthotic page, or, maybe use a different variation of a keyword, maybe foot inserts or arch supports. How many different times can you work those things in? So when Google crawls the page, it kind of like Google says, oh, like they're mentioning this a lot on the page and they're based in Portland, right? So when, someone looks up orthotics in Portland, we should show this page. Maybe they had a video that like kept people engaged and watching the video for a while. So, those were kind of signals that Google used in order to like, show certain pages near the top of the list. But, that may not no longer be the case. The AI assistants might have different signals of trust that they pull from. So, or maybe it's well-structured content in a certain way that explains the causes, the treatments, and your role and how you provide that type of care. They can maybe process that better than just looking for these keywords and when they're scanning your page. So it's important to realize like that's kind of the practical differences between SEO and GEO.
Well, here's a question. You mentioned where Google, if you've had a video on your page and Google would notice that people are watching that video for a certain period of time, that might be through YouTube. So Google knows that. Are you saying now with AI, if you're putting a video up, ideally having the transcript of the video on that page as well would be helpful?
It could be. I'm not sure how well, the AI bots or whatever they're doing is scrolling through and kind of transcribing that already. kind of for their ranking system. But I think the more
Yeah.
information you can have on the page, definitely the better, both for SEO and maybe even for GEO. So like for our podcast, for example, right, we always make sure we have the transcript uploaded so that, if people are searching for certain terms, they want to learn about different topics, that they'll, hopefully land on our page and listen to our podcast or watch the video of our podcast.
Yeah, it is surprising when, even with videos, I posted a video on Facebook years ago, and within a video that I uploaded that was 40 minutes long, there's this one little segment that went for about 30 seconds. And in the background of that little segment that I used, it had some music playing. And I uploaded it, and within an hour, I was told that I had to take it down. Disney, I had breached a copyright thing from Disney. And I thought, well, I'm not going to take Disney on. But it was surprising how a video within a video, and it was the smallest part, and light music in the background, they were able to just pick that up. So it's incredible what they can do.
Yeah, these tech corporations have incredible amounts of servers and tools and things that we're kind of blind. Sometimes we're kind of blind to until you get that takedown request, or you realize how strong kind of on-page SEO is, and you do a little bit of reading about that type of stuff, how important that stuff can be.
Okay, now let's move on to the practical steps that clinics can take.
Absolutely. So the first step, we talked about it kind of previously a little bit, but I'm just going to reemphasize it here, is that you really want to write for patients, not algorithms. That's you, or you're hiring a marketing agency. You don't want to do all this kind of keyword stuffing. You want to make sure that you're talking in plain language. You have plenty of frequently asked questions and answers on your page. What causes heel pain? When should I see a podiatrist? Kind of giving real answers to these questions. So it's going to help, these generative engines or ChatGPT realize that you're providing helpful and, good information to potential patients. Also, you want to highlight your authority. There's some thought that GEO is a little bit stronger when it comes to noticing that, what your degree is, your residency, making sure that you have kind of, if you've written papers or if you talked at conferences, having that in your bio could maybe potentially help you rank better. It's pretty common in the academic sector to have a PDF with kind of all your speaking gigs, all your papers, all that kind of stuff. Having a professional resume, maybe a link to it on a PDF. You don't have to put it fully on the page, but a lot of those, whether it be ChatGPT, those things can scan those pages potentially and read, your background, so they can kind of maybe rank you a little bit better when it comes to your credentials and expertise. Maybe also mentioning your community involvement in your bio. Are you helping with a diabetes foundation, or are you into like helping at marathons? Just kind of doing some things that can separate you from other podiatrists can be a helpful thing.
That's a great idea about expanding on your bio as a PDF and then having a link on there that people can go through. Because sometimes I've seen people's bios on their website and it just drags on, and there's so much dribble there that for the average person is probably not important. But for certain people, they go, I know I want as much information as possible, because they might want you for a speaking gig or for some other reason. But they can then click on that, and you can put as much information there as you want and really stack it with your experience. But then, the AI programs are also going to be looking at that and understanding and learning a lot more about you.
No, absolutely. I think patients will want to glance just to make sure you're, see a little bit about you, but they don't need to know where you did that fellowship at or where you gave a
Yeah.
conference talk. It's a great way just to have a link on there, and to build additional trust for either the bots or the engines that want to know it, or maybe the occasional patient that wants to build trust, or like you said, maybe a speaking venue or someone wants to see that, kind of build trust in who you are by utilizing that.
Yeah,
Also,
I'm going to use that even on my own website, though. I'm going to expand on it, do a PDF and attach it somewhere else so I can go through it, because I found even with my own bio, you're writing stuff and you're going, it's just starting to get a bit wanky. Yeah. You want to talk enough about yourself, but not too much. But it's good to be able to have an area to put that.
No, it's a good way to like I said, it kind of just, you can have that general summary of who you are, but you don't have to put it out there for everybody. But if someone wants to click a link to see more, you have that available. And like you said, it's just something you can utilize as a PDF and just keep it updated every time you do a workshop or a conference speaking gig.
Okay, what's next?
So next I would say is like the structured content. We talked about this a little bit, but this is basic SEO that I think will translate over potentially to GEO, is that, utilizing the right headings. So when you're, there's kind of what we see when we look at a web page, but then there's also the kind of like the behind the scenes, the kind of the technical SEO or GEO. So utilizing the right headings, utilizing bullet points, creating summaries that these kind of large language models can easily digest, and kind of like that shows who you are. So utilizing those things can be really helpful. And then, I think we talked about previously is that if things shift, I still find that Google reviews is the most important place that you should be really soliciting and kind of getting your reviews from. But, this becomes more popular. If you have a competitor, for Google, if you're a Google competitor, you don't really care about the Google reviews, or you can't really, you don't really care about that stuff as much. But if someone has Yelp reviews or health grades or other websites that you can kind of, show that shows that you are, a good physician, people have positive reviews on you on these other sites, it can be a really helpful thing that they can use as a resource, to pull from, that these AI engines might reference. And they're not going to want to reference the Google reviews, but maybe they'll
Yeah.
reference health grades or Yelp or something like that.
And the other part, we've talked about reviews a few times. There was a business I was going to use the other day, a service business. Podiatry is a service business. 0 reviews. It put me off. It really put me off, because I know that business had been there for a little while, no more than say 9 months, but not one review. And I went, yeah, I don't like that. It was unnerving. I'm thinking, oh, am I the first person to actually use this business? I wasn't sure.
Yeah, when I look at Airbnbs or like hotels and stuff, and if there's
Oh,
like there's
yeah.
0 or there's like 1 or 2 kind of like lukewarm ones, I feel maybe they let their friends or relatives stay there and they got 2 reviews from them, and this is just their first name, right? Like Mark S thinks this is a great place, but maybe it's, you're a little bit concerned if it has 100 or 200 and it's all 5 stars and people love it. Then I'm like, okay, it feels safer and I can trust these reviews.
Okay, what's next?
Last but not least is the risk of ignoring GEO. I think this is still a newer kind of realm. Obviously, ChatGPT has been around for a couple of years. It's maturing. These other AI engines are also maturing. So it's a good time for people that don't know about ChatGPT or know about GEO to spend a little bit of time. Obviously, we've kind of given a general introduction on the podcast today, but there's definitely different resources where you can dig in to understand more about what it is. You just don't want to get caught kind of blindsided by if this change does happen over the next 5 to 10 years, right? If Google's
Oh, yeah.
results and Google search and SEO is slowly eaten away by GEO, you're going to feel kind of silly if you're spending, if 90% of your budget on something that, only has, maybe Google is down to like 30% or something, right? So you want to make sure that you're making good financial decisions with your marketing budget. So, if patients, these AI assistants, they can't see you, they're going to recommend other clinics. So even if you have the best website, you have to make sure that it's being built for this GEO along with SEO. Like we talked about, it's not replacing SEO yet. It's kind of layering on top of it. So, early adopters that stand out on AI answers are going to become the default way where, patients will search, and they'll get those patients to come in the door. So, the question really isn't, should I do this? I think it's more about, how soon will my competitors start and what should I start learning about this to make sure that I'm putting myself and my clinic at the best possible opportunity to kind of take advantage of this as this kind of sector grows.
Do you think AI, like you said, the people who get in there, start using it like anything else, the earlier they get in, use it, apply it, learn from it, get better at it, the more of an advantage they'll have over somebody who just, I'll wait, I'll just see what happens. And then wait 2 or 3 years and they could really be missing out.
Yeah, I think there's a whole lot of innovation going on in this area here, right? From AI, these kind of AI opportunities to like utilize in marketing, but also have, the level of kind of voice to text translation with AI assistants is pretty phenomenal these days. It's almost to the point where I have a program right now where I can almost like whisper into the microphone, like very quietly, and it gets it, I would say 99.9% of the time, exactly correct. So I think the people that are utilizing and kind of experimenting with these different AI technologies, are going to just become more efficient at the very least. You're going to become more efficient, right, with what you're doing. a more efficient ad spend, more efficient in your practice, saving time instead of, these physicians who are, charting at home on the weekends or have, 5 days of charts stacked up and they're stressed out. I think there's a huge opportunity for a lot of people to improve kind of the way that they're utilizing their time. And by being less stressed out, they're going to be able to provide better care for patients that come to the clinic.
It's, it's come a long way since the Yellow Pages.
Absolutely.
But even though, okay, joke about the Yellow Pages, some things, even though it's changed a lot since then, the concepts are still the same. Like, I'm sure even when the Yellow Pages first came out, and I can't remember that, I'm not that old, but when it first came out, I'm sure it was the same thing. The early adopters that understood how it worked, there were rules around the Yellow Pages about the size of ads and timing and other placements in different areas of the book. To me, it's the same sort of concept. It's get in and learn this stuff.
Yeah, get in and learn it, utilize it in some different aspects of your life. It doesn't have to all be podiatry related initially. Just see how the ways it can make things better. Like I talked about, I found a lot of help when it comes to transcription, saving me time. I'm not having to type out, long searches or long reply emails. I'm making them personalized, but at the same time, saving a lot of time. I'd say to sum it up, Geo is about making your clinic shows up in AI generated answers, not just on Google. Patients are already using these tools to find podiatrists in your local area. Probably the clinics that adapt by creating clear, trustworthy, and structured content on their websites are going to be the ones that are remembered by these AI platforms and recommended. So it's really a new era. Being invisible to AI could really be detrimental to your business in the future. So spend some time learning about these different tools and how they could benefit your practice, because this is the way things are going. Like I said, it's kind of right now, it's kind of a layer on top of SEO. It's not necessarily taking a whole lot away from it currently, but so now is a great time to kind of get in there, understand how it works, so it can be a positive, growth area for your clinic.
Geez, we're a cutting edge podcast. I tell you right now, I listen to a lot of podcasts. I haven't heard anybody else talking about this particular subject yet. And I think in 12 months' time, remember when we did the first episode on ChatGPT? Was it 2 years ago? Maybe?
Yeah, a couple of years ago.
And there was a little bit of chatter about it, but there wasn't a lot. We did that episode. It was one of our most popular episodes. And now everybody talks about ChatGPT or another version of it. I reckon this topic in 12 months' time, we will probably I reckon in 6 months, we'll probably be touching on the subject again and expanding upon it. And what I like is the podiatrists who are listening to this now, you've just been given a head start on everybody else that doesn't listen to this podcast. But we still want you to tell all your podiatry friends to listen.
Yeah, don't keep it a secret. Spread the good word.
Don't keep it a secret. Yeah, just the nice podiatrists. The mongrel ones, let them figure out later. So anything else before we wrap up?
No, I think we're all good there, Tyson.
Okay, Big Jim. I look forward to talking again next week.
Sounds good.
Okay, see ya.
Bye.